every Harry Potter fan, whether movie only or deep into every inch of the lore, knows that most of the villains from the wizarding world, if they went to Hogwarts, seem to come from Slytherin house. Not all of them, mind you, but they certainly hold the majority. Why is that? Is there something inherently wrong with the House of Slytherin? Hey y'all, I'm the Geek Apprentice, and it has certainly been a while since I've done anything associated with the wizarding world, so needless to say, I'm excited to get back into it. Though rest assured, there are theory videos coming for Suzanne Collins' recent book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snake. Click up here if you want to see my full review of that. Well, sort of full review. It was good, spoiler alert, but it was good. So, the House of Slytherin, for the longest time, the most hated house. Hufflepuff was the most underrated, Gryffindor the most overrated, and Ravenclaw the most forgotten. Thankfully, I believe it's safe to say that things have kind of evened out for all of the houses since those initial stereotypes came to be. Hufflepuffs are now far more sought after because of characters such as Newt Scamander and Cedric Diggory. Gryffindor is no longer the most sought after house, well, at least it's evened up a little bit, it's not as stark of a contrast, and it gets the respect it warrants because of its diverse group of heroes, Ron, Hermione, and Harry. Ravenclaw still kind of hangs in the shadows, but that's okay because we're probably reading anyway and don't want to be disturbed. Still, we've got Luna Lovegood to keep us relevant. I think that's a good thing. What about Slytherin though? Well, at this point, I think it's almost hipster to be a part of the Slytherin house, which is a shame because I think that does a disgrace to its true house members. However, with a character like Slughorn, whom I'll go into more details about later, the streak of endless villains, if you will, is kind of broken, right? Well, we do still have a nice long list of villains to look at that come from their house. And that includes the most hated character in the entire series. And no, I'm not talking about Voldemort. You know who I'm talking about. Umbridge. Duh. Considering the staggering number of malicious people to come from the House of Slytherin, it's understandable that one would think something is amiss with the house itself. I mean, look at its creator. Salazar Slytherin had some terrible worldviews. However, it's actually not the house values itself that are wrong, and nowhere does it say that being pure blood is an automatic thing you need to have in order to be in the house, although most of them do tend to be purebloods. No, it's what's done with those values and the choices those people make. Slytherin's base house traits, while not inherently wrong in and of themselves, just seem to lend way to people making these immoral life choices. Let me explain this further by looking into the other three houses. Each of them has one trait that, if left unchecked or underdeveloped, can turn into a vice. Kind of like how my independence, if I'm not careful, can just turn into stubbornness. I admit it. Let's begin with my house. Ravenclaw. Wit beyond measure is a man's greatest treasure. Indeed, in addition, we also have knowledge, learning, wisdom, and creativity. Wanting to learn? That's great, one should never stop improving and bettering themselves. Wisdom, well, as scary as it can be, lends way to kind of garnering the traits of other houses too. At least I think so. It's wise to be brave and not bow down to fear. Gryffindor. It's wise to be resourceful. Slytherin. It is also wise to be kind and hardworking. Hufflepuff. So I see the value in wisdom in that it is all-encompassing. This just leaves the value of knowledge. While most Ravenclaws aren't actually goody two-shoes and don't always have the highest grades, and in fact might not do well in certain classes if it's not an area that piques their interest, at least that's true of me, there is a chance that a Ravenclaw could lean way to becoming a pretentious know-it-all smarty pants. Knowledge in itself is good, but can also be used for not so good. It's entirely possible that a Ravenclaw's valuing of the trait of knowledge or their own sense of knowledge can lend way to them thinking themselves way better than they are, or at least better than others because they're just so smart. Pride. And not in the good way. While our house is mostly just kind of eccentric people, I mean, Luna Lovegood, Trelawney, Lockhart, although he kind of fits into this vice description, if you know what I'm talking about. We have our bad people too, such as Professor Quirrell. So that is the Ravenclaw value that can turn into a vice. Knowledge to pride. Let's look into the Gryffindor house next. Gryffindor is a house built on the values of bravery, courage, chivalry, and nerve. Facing and overcoming your fears? Yeah, bravery and courage are great. Chivalry, well, it's usually referring to knights or warriors or people who are standing up for what's right. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool too. Where it gets sticky is the value of nerve. You've probably noticed that a common stereotype for Gryffindors is that they are loud and outgoing. Even if it can get annoying, that's not a bad thing. The vice comes in when their daringness and nerve turns into recklessness. Just because no one else has the nerve to do a certain thing doesn't mean they're cowards. It might not actually be smart to do a certain thing, and you being willing to do that thing doesn't make you brave, it could just make you reckless and stupid. When used well, nerve is nothing to be sniffed at. When not used well, yeah, it turns into what I keep saying, recklessness. This could end up severely hurting both yourself and others. This is where I would throw in the name of a bad Gryffindor who exemplifies what I'm saying, but the worst one is Peter Pettigrew, and he didn't have any nerve or bravery whatsoever, but he did fit into the Gryffindor house, or at least that was the only possible choice for him, because even though he had no bravery, he certainly valued it. At least that's the best. There's a Super Carlin Brothers video about it. They explain it way better. Just go watch that. So this just leaves Hufflepuff. Justice, kindness, hard work, and loyalty. They are often viewed as the most pure-hearted people, although I believe there are many, not Snape, from other houses that could compete with that title. Perhaps a better word would be innocent, but I don't like that one either, since it can be synonymous in some cases with weak, and Hufflepuffs are not weak. Seriously, don't mess with someone that a Hufflepuff cares about. They'll kill you. They don't take these things lightly. Again, justice. Hard work? I don't see a problem with this except for maybe working too hard, in which case you might just overwork yourself and only hurt yourself. What about justice? Well, while kindness might actually get in the way and skew your view of what is right and just, I don't believe this has as much of a way of turning into a vice as something else. It actually ended up being a toss-up between loyalty and kindness for me. And frankly, one of these turning vice is not necessarily going to hurt everyone else, but more so going to lead to you getting walked on by everyone else. Still, which is it? Which one of these traits is most likely to turn vice? Honestly, because of the justice trait, I imagine loyalty would bend to this, and thus I see kindness as a possible weakness, just as knowledge might be to a Ravenclaw or nerve to a Gryffindor. I think a lot of us have been there, where we just don't want to upset anyone, so we take our kindness too far and cross our own line to the point where we get trampled by others. However, over-kindness can actually lead to hurting others. Kindness should always include truth, and if you don't, you might actually be doing a huge disservice to another person. Sure, in the moment they might not want to hear the truth, but it'll be better for them in the long run. So by withholding truth because you want to be kind and not get into a fight or hurt anyone's feelings, you actually might just make things worse. So I guess that's the one most likely vice for a Hufflepuff, being so kind that truth is thrown by the wayside, which I know doesn't sound right because they also value justice, but work with me here, okay? Another problem here is that I don't have a person from a Hufflepuff house to hold up as like the evil example, showing that anyone from any house can go bad. Although there was that one kid who talked badly about Harry. Maybe? But that may have been part of his loyalty because he thought Harry was wrong, so he was trying to be loyal to others. Now I'm confused. Let's just move on. Okay, bringing all of this in, what am I trying to say? No house is immune to one of their values being used improperly. It says nothing about the house itself, but everything about that specific person. With that, let's Slytherin to Slytherin. That was a really bad pun. What are the values of the Slytherin house? And no, not Salazar Slytherin's personal twisted views, but the views of the house. Cunning, craftiness, resourcefulness, and ambition. Now, cunning could be viewed as like a more shrewd version of wit, if you will. More so to gain an end goal, and this doesn't always have to be used badly, but I guess it could. What about resourcefulness? I think this is a great trait to have. It's smart. I guess one could say that some use their pureblood status as a resource, but I don't think this trait is as easily skewed. Craftiness? Meh, this more falls in line with cunning, like a cunning version of creativity. Man, the Slytherin and Ravenclaw houses might be more similar than I thought. No, the big one here is ambition. Personally, I think ambition is the best trait of the Slytherin house, but unfortunately, it can also be the worst. It seems to me that ambition is the source of the downfall of every evil Slytherin. Wanting to be successful and having a strong end goal, that alone is perfectly fine and in fact is great. But more than any trait from any of the houses, ambition has the possibility to turn into the stickiest and possibly one of the worst vices, a lust for power. And those who really desire power will do anything to get it. And the outcomes of attaining such power when the one getting it has made some questionable choices is probably the most devastating. In my opinion, the line between ambition and greed for power is the thinnest of any possible value to vice that we have found in the other houses. Power is tempting for many, and a small taste can be all it takes. Some do loathe power, yes, but if you already value ambition, the tightrope you're walking is especially thin. And when you're surrounded by others with the same ideals and kind of promoting that idea, the balance can become off. Left unchecked, ambition can easily turn into one becoming power hungry with no regard for anyone who gets in their way. Okay, so like I said, every house has that one trait that can turn into a vice if the person doesn't have a strong moral ground or people to keep them in check. And anyone who makes bad choices and starts down the path of continuing to make immoral choices, yeah, they're gonna reflect badly on the house, but that's not the house's fault. It wasn't the house that made the choices, it was the individual who did. The same goes for the Slytherin house. The values in and of themselves are great. The problem is that, unfortunately, the values of said house have the shortest and easiest path to immorality and a superiority complex. Hence, yeah, they're the most likely house to produce evil witches and wizards. But as I keep saying, not every Slytherin is like that. Look at Slughorn. His ambition stayed within reason. He enjoyed and was fascinated by the hard work and discoveries of his students. He wanted to see them grow on their own terms, become crafty, resourceful, and cunning in their own way. That was his ambition, along with trying to get all of the students that are from the same family. I don't know. It's a weird ambition, but it's not bad. Basically, he aimed his ambition at something good. But hey, I know people who would easily claim that Slughorn was a fluke and Slytherin's just a bad house. Yeah, Salazar was pretty bad, but Slughorn is an example of how those values can be used properly and for good. And no, I don't count Snape as a good Slytherin. I just don't. I've explained it before, no. But the writing of his character was just, excellent. So good. I personally think we should do away with the over-romanticized quote of always because it's based in lust and obsession, and instead go for a braver, much better quote, till the very end. But that's just me. But my point is, Slytherin is not an inherently bad house. It just happens to have traits that have a very short and fine line between value to vice. And that's why most evil witches and wizards, should they have gone to Hogwarts, happen to be Slytherin. But in the end, it's not the house's fault, but the choices of the individual. Alright, so those were my thoughts on why Slytherin seems to produce so many evil witches and wizards, but let me know what you think. I would also be interested in you commenting below and telling me which house you are and which trait of that house is the one that speaks most strongly to you. As I said, me being Ravenclaw definitely has to do with creativity more than any of the other traits. If you enjoyed this video, consider checking out my other content and following me on Instagram, and maybe joining the geekdom by subscribing. I also do live streams every Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so I would love for you to come and join that. It's a good time. But anyway, that is all for today. Thank you for watching.